What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Speaking of the SEC, let's just start with Alabama, because I've been a big proponent of Kalen DeBoer. Obviously, he was a Fresno State guy and had success, and then went to Washington and dominated. I mean, this guy was beating everybody and beat Sark and was in the national championship game. Did a fantastic job. Became the type candidate that you not only seriously consider when a guy like Nick Saban retires, you hire. It was a real hire. I know a lot of people are like retweeting Coward's tweet about it being one of the best transitions in college football history. Wasn't a crazy thought. At the time, DeBoer's record was like, I forget off the top of my head, but it was like 111. I mean, he dominated it everywhere he coached. I do believe this. I've always had a theory, and I stand by this, and I think there are only a couple outliers in the history of college football. Where in the NFL, it doesn't matter. Where you are from, where you were born, and where your career kind of takes off, usually is where you're going to have success as a head coach. There are outliers, like a guy from the Midwest can go to the South, like Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer could have coached in China, in Spain, in Alaska, in Florida. It wouldn't have mattered. He would have won. Same thing with Nick Saban. But I saw it out here on the West Coast. Chris Peterson, who had a ton of success at Boise State and then Washington. Grew up in Southern California. Went to UC Davis. Coached at UC Davis. Coached at Oregon. Coached at Boise. Coached at Washington. Thrived on the West Coast. Pete Carroll is a great example. While in the NFL, he could coach any team. Tampa Bay, New England, Seattle. It wouldn't. In college, it does. I don't think Pete Carroll would have worked at Florida. I don't think he would have worked at Alabama. But he thrived at USC. Just like I don't think a lot of non-Southerners work in the South. When I was at Fresno State, Jim McElwain had just left. And his close friend, Doug Nussmeier, my first year at Fresno State, was our offensive coordinator. And Garrett, I remember him having Garrett must have been like 2 or 3 years old, 5 years old at max. He was really, really young. But those guys are West Coast guys. And Jim McElwain coached at Colorado State, had a bunch of success, and then went to Florida, and it was a disaster. Why? Because he's not one of theirs. Like, I kind of like your name to be Kirby or Dabo and have a Southern draw in the South. It matters. Just like in the Midwest, Jim Harbaugh played at Michigan. It really helped when he took over the program. And I just think this Kalen DeBoer thing, is he as bad as it's going right now? I don't think he is. I don't know what's going on. They're 5-5 in their last 10 games. But Nick Saban was a hard ass. Like an old school throwback asshole when it came to being a coach. And everyone in the program, players, staff, administration, kind of ate that shit up. They liked him to tell them what to do. When he said jump, they said how high, and then they wouldn't stop leaping till he said stop. And it worked. And everyone profited. The players, the administration, the school, the SEC as a whole. Do you know how many people I know from Northern California that now send their kids to Ole Miss, to Tennessee, to Florida, that go to school in the South? That was unheard of when I was in high school. I remember being kind of nervous, like, should I even entertain going to Oregon or Arizona? I can count more than probably almost both hands the amount of family friends I know that either their kids or their kids' girlfriends or whatever went to school in the SEC. That a big part of that was how popular the SEC came with their football programs. I believe that to my core. And like Nick Saban obviously was the flag bearer for that movement. And Kalen DeBoer is kind of an intellectual. He's not a screamer. A couple years ago when Fresno State was playing ASU, I went to the tailgate, and me and Maria ended up going to the game and hanging out with a bunch of Fresno State guys, former players. And I was talking with one of the former players on the team that had played for DeBoer and was an offensive player and really liked him. And I said, what was he like? Because he had played for both him and Jeff Tedford. He's like, Tedford's a lot different. And Tedford's a West Coast guy as well. played at Fresno State, from Los Angeles, coached at Oregon, coached at Cal. That's where his region is. But Tedford's kind of an old school asshole, kind of a throwback. DeBoer's like a cerebral, not a yeller, not a screamer, like Chris Peterson. So when he took over the University of Washington, that administration was used to like an intellectual. I'm not saying that Saban is not, but in terms of that's the way he interacts. Google Nick Saban or YouTube him at practice. He screams at everybody. I know people that have worked for him. You go into those staff meetings, your head was on a swivel and you were dialed in because shrapnel could come from any angle. That's not who this guy is. And I wonder if these players or whatever, they're not reacting because it's not really working. I mean, they got their ass kicked yesterday. Now, when I see the stat that Alabama hadn't lost to, I think it's like he's already lost to 4 unranked opponents. Nick Saban lost to 4 unranked opponents in like 17 years. Week 1 in the transfer portal era, like Florida State could be the 7th best team in the country, or they could be 2-10. We have no clue. Beside 3 or 4 teams, like we know Penn State, we know Ohio State, we know Texas, we know Georgia. But Utah could be the 7th best team in the country, or they could be like the 50th. We don't know. Times have changed. Here's what I know about Florida State, and Mike Norvell specifically. That 2 years ago, on this weekend, he played Brian Kelly, pretty sure on Sunday night. Beat the living piss out of him. Brian Kelly's team was led by Jaden Daniels, Malika Neighbors, and Brian Thomas Jr. And Mike Norvell curb stomped them. Oh yeah, he happened to have about 7 or 8 guys that were drafted in the top 100. Jared Verse, many consider one of the best young defensive linemen. Oh yeah, his teammate Braden Fisk, who statistically was better than him last year, who's a stud. Keon Coleman, who I don't know is a starting wide receiver for the Bills that most consider one of, if not the best team in the league. Renardo Green, who's a starting corner for the San Francisco 49ers. Like, his team was loaded. And then last year, what if last year was an outlier at 2-10? He's a big transfer portal guy. It didn't work. Because I watched this team. I went, they're fast, they're physical, they're explosive. And Mike Norvell's proven a couple years ago, beat Brian Kelly, beat Dabo Sweeney, beat Mike Elko, who's now the coach at Texas A&M, went 13-0, ran the table, won the ACC. And if it wasn't for his quarterback basically getting his leg amputated, I think Jordan Travis legitimately retired with the New York Jets because his leg's all screwed up, that they would have made the playoffs. And who knows? That team was built like they could have won the national championship if Jordan Travis was playing. This guy's not some random scrub. Honestly, like part of the reason I have so much respect for DeBoer is I saw what he did at Washington. In his second year there, they went to the Natty. That could have been easily Mike Norvell if it wasn't for this weird circumstance with his quarterback. So I think everyone was writing off Mike Norvell, and maybe I bought into it too. Like, he just had a weird year in the transfer portal. He's a transfer portal guy. And sometimes teams aren't going to mesh. And sometimes they are. So that was a really, really impressive win. But what I think Mike Norvell, like, yeah, he kind of feels like he fits in the South. Kalen DeBoer doesn't really. Just like Lincoln Riley. Like, does he feel like L.A.? No, he doesn't to me. Now, maybe his team's good enough, and maybe with NIL they can recruit well enough. But I'm a huge believer that regions in college football matter. Andy Reid could coach the Patriots, could coach the Rams, could coach the Chiefs. The NFL does not matter. In college, it does. It's why, listen, there's no disputing what Brian Kelly did at Notre Dame was impressive. If you look at Brian Kelly's resume, it is impressive. He's won everywhere he went. Grand Valley State, was it my first year or second year? I think it might have been my second year as a GA at Fresno State. We went to the University of Cincinnati, Nippert Stadium. Pretty sure Jason Kelsey might have been like a true freshman on that team. They had Tony Pike, I think their quarterback was. Gilliard, this wide receiver that was drafted to the Rams. That team went undefeated. They went to a BCS bowl game. Now, he left for Notre Dame, if you remember, and they ended up getting killed. I think Tim Tebow's team played him, and they destroyed him, but Brian Kelly had left. I remember thinking, like, this team's good. I mean, this guy knows what he's doing. Now, when he went to the South and he faked the accent, you're like, I don't know if this is going to work. He's a little douchey, but there's no disputing, like, he kind of knows what he's doing. And offensively is not his problem. They always had sweet offensive linemen. They always had good running backs. He's clearly good at quarterbacks at LSU. Wide receivers are never going to be a problem at LSU. The question is going to be a defense. Well, the thing at these schools, they will give you unlimited cash to buy coaches. And LSU, like, he went and got, what's the guy's name? Blake Baker, who's wearing the LSU baseball hat. Last year, they clearly had improved from Jaden Daniels' season. This year, they looked real. I mean, defensive line wise, they were flying around up front. They were working Clemson. The defensive backs were making play after play. And this is the thing with doing these preseason rankings. It's like, yeah, you could have convinced me LSU's an 8-4 team, or you could convince me they're 11-1. And it's like, oh, this guy number 4, he's this transfer portal guy from Virginia Tech, and he looks like Patrick Peterson out there. And that's why it's so hard. I heard someone say this today. I forget where, but like a couple years ago, pre-transfer portal, if you went 2-10 at Florida State, what Mike Norvell just did, it would have taken you years to turn that thing around to get to like compete for 9-10 wins. Years. Now it's like you can do it in 6 months. If you told me that Florida State's 10-2 or 11-1 and wins the ACC, wouldn't be shocking at all. Wouldn't be shocking at all. So the game has really, really changed, and it's about getting the right couple players. And at schools like LSU, Clemson, definitely Ohio State, Florida State, Texas, we're talking like 3 or 4 guys swing the whole thing. Last year, what happened to Ohio State? They got Caleb Downs, who's one of the best players, not the best player in the country. They got Will Howard, who down the stretch was incredible. So if you hit on the right 2 or 3 players, I mean, if Miami last year hadn't signed Cam Ward and signed like an average quarterback, they're going like 5-7 or 6-6. But they had the number 1 pick in the draft, one of the worst defenses in the country, and they went 9-3. So the transfer portal is this, unless you're living in it like a college football GM, we're all just taking educated guesses. We don't really know. We think we kind of know. We have some idea. But there are huge swings with individuals. And, like, let's face it. I was on the couch, and Maria looks at me last night watching LSU-Clemson, and she goes, "Who would you draft?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Who would you draft?" I don't know. I don't even know half these kids are. She's like, "You should do a segment on that." And I was like, "Oh, a segment on who I would draft?" She's like, "Yeah, call it like the Couch Scout." I'm like, honestly, honey, that's not a bad idea. And I was thinking, like, I'm sitting there watching these 2 quarterbacks, Garrett Nussmeier, who, like I said, I've known Doug Nussmeier for 15 years. I saw him at the Combine 2 years ago, walking down the hall. I love that guy. I love Doug. He's the man. He's always been a huge supporter of me. Loves the podcast. Always gets a huge smile when he sees me. And he was walking with Brent Selleck. This is when he was the quarterback coach for the Eagles the year he's had an awesome little run here. Won the Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts as the quarterback coach. Then goes with Kellen to New Orleans. That's his guy. And then his son, like that was, and I guess the couch scout in me goes, listen, Garrett Nussmeier's good. And obviously he showed flashes last year, had some great moments and had some down moments. That performance on the road, some of these quarterbacks are playing nobodies and average teams, like Power 4 teams. I don't even know what to make of it. Like that was a real opponent on the road. You probably can't hear yourself think, this guy, Garrett, got crushed time and time again, and he kept getting up. It's like, this guy's tough SOB. He's making great throws, but he's kind of a throwback quarterback. He's not Mr. Athletic. To me, he kind of has like, and I'm talking the good versions of these guys, what Jimmy Garoppolo was early on in his San Francisco career. I would call him mobile, but he definitely could move a little bit. And like Kirk Cousins, he's more mobile than Kirk Cousins, but he's that style of player. But he's really good in the pocket. He's really tough. He will sit in there and make throws. The guys really like him. I mean, that's an NFL quarterback. Now, how high his ceiling is, like I'm not saying Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow, but he's a really good player, and that was a really impressive game. It's why you can't box score scout, because didn't throw 7 touchdowns, but every single big play they needed, he was on the money. Every time he got knocked down, he'd fucking shake it off and jump right back up. Honestly, I was impressed with Cade Klubnik as well. And to me, like, this is going to sound a little, I think he's kind of got some Brock Purdy vibes. Athletic, I wouldn't call him a runner. He's not Lamar or Kyler, but he definitely can move. Definitely a good playmaker. Also pretty tough. And his offensive line, I thought, kind of underachieved last night, getting rocked by LSU. I mean, I thought LSU and Florida State dominated the line of scrimmage on defense. I would say the same thing for Miami tonight. They were dominating the line of scrimmage. And you can tell, you're like, God, that guy looks like an NFL defensive end. God, that guy looks like an NFL defensive end. And that really is the difference. If you get good quarterback play and then good defensive line play, you're going to have a chance to win the national championship. So I was really impressed. To me, Nussmeier kind of gives off Cousins, Jimmy Garoppolo vibes. I would say Cade gives maybe a little more athletic Purdy, but like just a good player. And I have no problem. Like I said, the neutral site games need to go away because I wish we could get to the point where we don't even play these meaningless games. I know Coward's high on USC because they beat Missouri State Western Eastern. Like that game's not real to me. Like it's just my Guy Haberman was calling it, so I was watching it, but it was like this is a massacre. What do I even take away? Then you watch Texas and Ohio State or Clemson and LSU or Notre Dame and Miami. It's like there are NFL players all over this field. Like this is real football. This is what we want to watch. It's just fantastic TV.